It's March Madness time. Well, have some Red Bull, some coffee.
It's a perfect way to show how crazy these past couple of months have been.
They are the big contenders for the tournament. Haven't lost a game yet. I like Arizona.
Arizona's a good team, a tall team, a fast team.
Incredibly stacked conference, the SEC.
Baylor won the game, and that's a 18-year promise, like you said. And Scott Drew, that's an incredible story for him. And
I just feel there's going to be a big upset, and
so yeah, I think it's an easy pick.
Hi, this is Andrew Utz, the winner of the Outsiders Opinions inaugural Bracket Challenge, and you're listening to Kevin and Austin.
what's up, y'all? Welcome to the final day. It is here. Selection Sunday has happened. The brackets are open, and we are recording the night of brackets opening. And of course, join our group. The name of the group is OO, capital 2 O's, perfect bracket, capital P, capital B. Password is Write Your Story. The link is in the description. Should be other places as well. We had a video on Monday. But let's get right down to it. Let's say redemption team. I finally came up with one. Austin and Jake, the redemption team.
Yeah, last year was definitely a year that we would like to forget. We didn't trust ourselves, and always March Madness is tough. But there was certain picks that we didn't go with because we were just like, that can't happen again, and that was UConn. There's also picks that we made that were just poor. So this year we plan on bouncing back, and to headman that, our March Madness expert Jake.
Yeah, like he said, we did a lot of things that were like we didn't trust our gut as much, and also I know for myself, I was more into college basketball last year than I ever was, and I got really, really excited about the idea of certain teams because of the energy that they brought, like in Iowa State, and that's why I was so excited with them, knowing and being fully aware of their possible weaknesses, and so I think this year it's more of a step back, look at the team for who they really are, and just go with your gut.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. And once again, we are starting with regions. A video is each region. The fifth video will be our final four and our champion, as we detailed that at the start of the month of how we were approaching March. So, what region are we going to start with?
Let's just start with the top of the bracket. I'll start with the South.
All right. So, we get to the South. We have Auburn, number 1 seed, versus the 16th seed, Alabama State / SFU. Who wants to start?
I could start this one. Auburn has consistently until recently looked like the best team in the country, maybe one of the best number one overall teams we've ever seen. And even though they have struggled recently, I don't see them dropping a number 16 seed game.
Yeah, yeah, and struggled recently. I mean, they're losing against top 10 teams, so it's not like they're losing against bum teams, and they're also losing close. I mean, they lost to Bama in OT, they lost to Tennessee by 5, but it was really closer at the end. And so I don't see how Auburn is probably the most confident I am not to lose in the first round, in my opinion.
All right, so I pick Auburn. Now we have 8 and 9 seed matchup: Louisville versus Creighton.
Jake, I'll let you start on this one.
Okay. To start with this one, the tough thing about this one is that these are two solid teams who have both been very good recently. Louisville has won, I think, 20 of their last 22 games. But the thing about both of these teams is they both shoot a lot of threes and don't hit a lot of them either. I think Louisville shoots at like 28 threes per game and only hits 33% of them. I think Creighton shoots just as many as that and only hits 34% of them. And get this. This is a funny stat that I found, Austin. Creighton is third in all of D1 in defensive rebounds per game, but they are 306th in offensive rebounds per game.
That's pretty crazy. They're not crashing the glass.
No,
on the offensive side, but they also don't allow offensive rebounds. So
that's true. And Creighton also does not foul. The good thing about Louisville is they have a defensive pest in Chucky Hepburn. So this one's really, really a toss-up. But with my gut and based on the way that the teams played most recently, I might just have to roll with Creighton solely because of Ryan Kalbrenner.
Yeah, that's a good pick, and I really want to go Creighton here. I'm struggling though. Louisville forces double the turnovers uh, that Creighton does, and that's something that in a March game that could be close, that could be the difference. If you get, I mean, if Louisville gets 8 steals and Creighton only gets 4, I mean, it's going to be hard something hard to come back from. I am going to go Creighton though because of the experience they have. I think that's going to be the difference here. Creighton's an older team. I just find it really hard to believe that Ashworth and Cochran are going to go out in the first round for their last time. I mean, we've seen them make Sweet 16 runs. We've seen them be the better team. And while I don't necessarily love this matchup for him, I do like both teams. I am going to go Creighton here.
All right. And for the people watching, I don't know what was happening with the screen recording. You probably saw me log back in. I was looking at the matchup data, and I couldn't exit out. I don't know what was happening. My computer's on its last legs, but I was paying attention just to make sure. Am I the deciding vote, or are we both, or Jake?
We both chose Creighton, so it's
Okay,
Auburn
great.
versus Creighton in the second round.
Sweet.
But we want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
going to
yeah.
pick Creighton as well. So
Okay.
Any particular reasoning or just your
I
gut?
think I think gut, but you did mention the experience, and I think that's a huge thing as we've talked about with March. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's move on.
now we have Michigan versus UC San Diego, and Michigan just won their Big Ten tournament for the first time since 2018.
Yep, and they're going against one of the hottest teams in the nation. And Jake said this in a call before a couple hours ago regarding how sometimes you just gotta say I don't know, and this is definitely one of the games where I feel like that is the case. Michigan should be one of the hottest teams in the nation. They just ran the Big Ten tournament, and they've won a lot of close games. They have some experience on their side, but they are the worst turnover-prone team in the Power Five, and the best team at turnover ratio in all of college basketball is UCSD, and that's a bad matchup. And I have Michigan fans telling me about their size, how they basically have 2 centers that play. Danny Wolf can pass the ball extremely well, but Danny Wolf's also prone to turnovers, and height isn't everything anymore. And I do really struggle with this. Jake, I'll let you talk before I say who I'm picking here.
Like Austin said, that I said earlier, um, this is going to be a big year for I don't know, because there are so many good teams and so many teams with like so many matchups where the weaknesses may outweigh the strengths and the strengths might outweigh the weaknesses, and some of the teams are so similar that it's impossible to pick. This is not the case with Michigan and UC San Diego. In fact, they're almost the complete opposite team. And so it's tough to figure out which strength of each team is going to reign supreme at the end of the day. Both teams are very hot right now. Both won their conference tournaments. There's something to be said about, of course, height doesn't matter. And as great as UC San Diego has been, I am a little skeptical of the competition. They didn't have a bad non-conference schedule, but I'm skeptical of the competition, and like we just mentioned with Creighton, I'm skeptical of the experience. And Vlad Golden has had made a Final Four run with FAU. Danny Wolf upset Auburn last year, and so I there's something to be said about the experience that Dusty May has on that roster, and the sheer rebounding ability. And the thing is, Michigan, yeah, they've been turning the ball over. They're so bad at turnovers, and it's so frustrating to watch. But they still were able to find ways to win in the Big Ten conference tournament solely based on being able to out rebound the other team. I mean, if you look at the Maryland game, they had like Michigan had like 40 something rebounds. Maryland had 18, and so they crashed the glass so well. And I don't think UC San Diego has been primed for that kind of competition, and they haven't played a team as big and as strong and as aggressive on the glass as Michigan. So I am going to have to roll with Michigan. But like Austin said, this is such a toss up, and It's a really, really tough decision to make.
Yeah, there's stuff that goes both ways for both of these teams. Things that are huge advantages, such as I trust UC San Diego to hit more threes. I trust them to not turn over the ball as much. But like you mentioned with Michigan, I trust Michigan to also force some turnovers, even though UCSD is not turning the ball over that much. But Michigan is very good around the rim. They have a very high field goal percentage, and they also get a lot of rebounds. They have some size, and the experience is definitely with them. I agree with you. I think a lot of people are going to take UCSD, and I don't blame them at all. That's not something that I'm saying is wrong. But this every year there feels like there's one of these games with this very, very elite mid-major, and that team doesn't end up winning. I think this is it. I have Michigan winning as well.
Okay, all right. We have Michigan. Even though, like I talked about Michigan, I am skeptical, just kind of Michigan, but we'll have to see. So now we go to Texas A&M versus Yale. Texas A&M is the 4th seed, and Yale is the 13 seed.
I could start this one. Texas A&M is a team that I really, 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 really want to like. I really, really want to like Texas A&M. I love Buzz Williams. I think he's a phenomenal guy. I love his outfits. Everything about Texas A&M, I want to like. But there's something to be said about one recent success. They beat Auburn, but other than that, they've been struggling. There's something to be said about not beating Texas in the conference tournament. There's something to be said about a team that in late game situations cannot hit free throws, foul out a lot, and cannot hit threes. And I don't like that about Texas A&M.
Yeah, I sorry to interrupt, but there's something I have to mention here. They're bad at hitting field goals, threes, and free throws. How is that possible? How has a team made it this far and are legitimately horrible at shooting threes? And outside of Wade Taylor, one of the worst teams in the nation at free throw percentage. If you take away Wade Taylor's free throws, they shoot like 60% from the line. And they're obviously one of the worst teams at field goal percentage. The 330. I don't know what to like about this team. They shoot 41% from the field, 31% from three, and outside of Wade Taylor, if you take away his free throws, shoot like 60% from the line. While Yale shoots 49%, 38%, and 73%. They're also 5-5 in their last 5, or last 10. And while that does include a massive win over Auburn, I have my doubts about this team. I'll let you continue, Jake.
Well, you kind of summed it up. Like, while there are some things to like about Texas A&M. I love that they're physical. I love that they're aggressive. They're one of the best rebounding teams in the nation. But in the end, you got to be able to hit shots, and especially in late game situations, you got to be able to come through from the line, and you got to be able to hit a couple shots, and that's what bit them in the butt against Texas. That is why they lost to Texas. And Yale, like you said, also a good rebounding team, a very good 3-point shooting team. They dominated the Ivy League, and not to mention, they have John Polikides,
who was amazing last year against Auburn. And so let's not act like it's a team with zero experience. It's not. Their star, their best player, literally won them a tournament game against an SEC team last year. Give me Yale.
Give me Yale as well.
All right, great, yeah. Going for the upset. Now, all right, you talked about Texas A&M and just kind of not trusting them. I think it is pretty incredible that the SEC only has 2 teams not playing in the tournament. And I'm pretty shocked Ole Miss is a 6 seed. And we do have San Diego State could possibly doing it. And then you also have UNC as well. So I'm curious, Austin, we'll go with you with San Diego State.
Well, I know that Jake doesn't like San Diego State's offense. But if we look at these 2 opponents, I do think San Diego State ends up beating UNC. I think that's a good matchup for San Diego State, and I think they will win that game. If we go off that logic, Mississippi versus San Diego State, Ole Miss and San Diego State basically the same splits, 44-34 are their field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. Then it comes down to free throw, and San Diego State is horrible at free throws. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. They shoot under 67% from the line. But if we talk about a team with tournament experience, there's a lot of guys on this roster that have gone to a national championship, have gone to a Sweet 16, and we have not seen that from Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss will struggle to shoot the ball on the biggest stage. Nick Boyd is legitimately good for San Diego State. And while I don't know, I don't believe this San Diego State's team is as good as last year, or especially the year before that. I do think they're better than Ole Miss.
I, like Austin said, especially last year when he was trying to say that San Diego State was going to beat UConn in the in the Sweet 16, which I think he said. I'm not gonna, don't quote me on that. I, as much as I'd like to fade them because of their offense, their defense single-handedly wins them games, and they also have a good enough offense to win. They don't score a lot of points, but they have enough guys that can shoot that to make up the balance. And so I agree. It's tough because UNC's been kind of on a streak lately. Um, but San Diego State's the number one scoring defense in the country, and that's very valuable. And so I do think San Diego State will beat UNC. And then when we get to Ole Miss, they're, as much as they're fun to watch. I like Malik Dia. Ole Miss is very streaky, and they haven't been great lately. And they're not good at shooting threes. And their best 3-point shooter, Sean Padula, over his last 3 games is shooting 28% from three. And he's 1 for 12 over his last 2 games. And so Ole Miss has not been great at all lately. And they barely squeaked by a lackluster Arkansas team in, sorry Austin, in the
No,
tournament,
it's
in the SEC tournament.
I don't mind.
And so I might also have to pick San Diego State here.
Okay. So we're all in agreement. Upset Ole Miss, San Diego State. And yeah, I'm even if somehow UNC beats them, I still don't trust an Ole Miss. Now we go to Jake's darling Iowa State versus Lipscomb.
Oh yes, my darling Cyclones. Unfortunately for these Cyclones, they've had a very, very disappointing season. And as much as I love the Cyclones, as much as I love the energy they got, as great as Curtis Jones is, and as awesome as Milan Momcilovic is in the post with his post fades, they've been a struggling team.
They're
And they
beating
are
an injured
without
team.
and
Yeah.
an injured team because they are going to be without Keyshawn Gilbert for the NCAA tournament this year. Now, Lipsy should be back, but Lipsy has not been the 3-point shooting guard he needs to be. This team is still elite defensively, um, which is why I definitely think they will beat Lipscomb. But I wouldn't put it past them to lose in one of the early rounds, including the first round.
I have the same opinion. I don't think they're going to lose to Lipscomb. I don't think Lipscomb has the wherewithal to keep up with Iowa State's suffocating defense. But this is not. I'm not as confident in this Iowa State team as I was in last year's, and I especially think that they are going to be prone to losing to teams that they probably last year would not have lost to.
All right. So we got Iowa State. Now we go to number 7 Marquette versus number 10 New Mexico.
Ah, my other darling, the Lobos. This team disappointed me last year. Um, and I think that was solely the competition change that they experienced from the Mountain West to the ACC, which I thought the Mountain West was pretty good, and they were. But Clemson got hot at the right time, and they ended up making that Elite Eight run. So unfortunately for the Lobos, they couldn't pull it out last year when they had a great squad. This year, their squad is not as great. They lost Jamal Mashburn Jr. to Temple. Jalen House uh, graduated. JT Toppin transferred to Texas Tech. Um, but they kept one man by the name of Donovan Dent. And this one man maybe the best guard in the country on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Now, Marquette has a guy named Cam Jones, who may be one of the other best guards in the entire country on both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. This is going to be one heck of a matchup, but solely based on my love for the Lobos and Marquette's recent struggles from the field. New Mexico's also struggled, but because of my love for the Lobos, I'm gonna take New Mexico here solely because of Donovan Dent and Nelly Jr. Joseph's duo connection.
I haven't been sold on Marquette all season. I've been waiting for it, but they continue to lose in games that I think they should win. They lost by 15 a couple weeks ago to Villanova, a team that's not in the tournament. And I struggle to see Marquette making a run this year, while Cam Jones definitely is one of the best guards in college basketball. I agree with Jake. Donovan Dent is really that good. Now, shooting 68.7% from the free throw line, which New Mexico is, that's difficult to get over, but New Mexico learned from last year, in my opinion, and they win this game.
All right, so we have New Mexico advancing. Now we have number 2 Michigan State versus number 15 Bryant.
I'll go first here. I just find it really hard to believe that Bryant can keep up, athletically speaking, with what Michigan State is this season. They're full of athletic freaks on that entire roster. And I find it hard to believe that Bryant can keep up with them, not just speed-wise, but height-wise and jumping-wise. Michigan State plays feisty. They play rough. They play tough. And it's a hard team to guard. It's a hard team to score against. And so I'm going to take Michigan State to win.
I agree. While Bryant's a pretty cool team to look at. They got some guys. They have some guys who can shoot very well from three. They score a lot of points. But it's Michigan State. It's Tom Izzo. I'm not ever going to bet against a legendary coach in the first round again. So, with that being said, Michigan State's going to win.
All right, so now we have Michigan State versus New Mexico in the second round.
This is tough. Now I will preface the rest of what I'm going to say is that I am going to go with Michigan State here. I am. I want to go New Mexico, but I just Tom Izzo gets something out of his players that maybe I don't see during the regular season, and they have beaten some extremely talented teams. I mean, they're 2-0 against Michigan in their last 10, and they consistently win games when maybe they don't shoot the best from the field. They don't shoot the best from three, and it's because of how hard they play, coached by Tom Izzo, how well they rebound, and how well they play defense. And so I think it's going to be suffocating for a team like New Mexico. I think they could double Donovan Dent and try to get him off his game, because if Donovan Dent isn't scoring 20 points, I find it hard to believe New Mexico could win this game. And so I'm going to go Michigan State, even though I do like New Mexico this year, and I would say that they do have a chance, but I'm going to go with Michigan State.
I agree, but I'll tell you why, and I'll give you some more. You know what? I'll save the information. As much as I love Donovan Dent, as much as I love the Lobos, as much as I love the Rick Pitino disciple himself, Richard Pitino, the Lobos don't have the firepower. And Michigan State can rebound like crazy. And Michigan State is pesky. And Tom Izzo is a legendary coach. And they can hit their free throws. And they've been playing better lately, even though they lost to Wisconsin. They've been playing very, very well. And so I'm also going to take the Spartans here.
All right. So Michigan State advances. Now you have Iowa State, and how we've talked about it, Iowa State versus San Diego State.
I'll let you start here, Jake.
This is a tough one. Well, it's actually not as tough. There's a lot of tough ones in this. This is less tough. This is where I think San Diego State loses their run. Even though Iowa State has their missteps, these are both two elite defensive teams. But one of the offenses is not like the other. And Iowa State still has a very good offense in guys like Curtis Jones and Momcilovic. And if you take every player in the country at their hottest, Curtis Jones is one of the best players in college basketball. There are moments where he will get going and you cannot stop him, no matter how good your defense is. Momchilovic, monster in the post. Deshaun Jackson and Joshua Jefferson, phenomenal in the paint. And they're going to have Lipsy back. I still think Iowa State pulls this out.
Yeah, Kevin, we're not getting a lot for you to decide on here. I think Jake and I have agreed on every pick so far. But this is another one. Look, I want to take San Diego State here. But even with Keyshawn Gilbert's injury, I just struggle to see how San Diego State wins this game. And it really comes down to free throw percentage. I mean, Iowa State shoots 10%, almost 10% better. That's a lot. That's a lot. And while they both shoot around the same three-point percentage, they just don't shoot the same volume of threes. Iowa State shoots more threes, so it's more impressive when they shoot 35.8% than San Diego State shoots 33.5%. So I think Iowa State wins this game even with its injuries. And while I do think the Iowa State ceiling is capped this year, I don't think it's difficult to see them winning 2 games.
All right, so we'll talk about the Iowa State versus Michigan State matchup in just a sec. Now we got to figure out the Elite Eight. Or no. Yeah. We'll figure out who meets for the Elite Eight. Auburn versus Creighton. Or let's go Michigan versus Yale. Sorry.
Danny Wolf against his old team. I think that'd be pretty fun to see, but I'm going to go with Michigan here. I think Michigan, if they get through the first game, their hotness level will actually be, it'll be white hot. They'll be on fire at this point in the season. And when you have a coach that's been to a Final Four and has experienced winning games, and you have these guys that have obviously had March success before, I think Michigan will get through. Now, Yale's a tough opponent, but I think Yale will have a very similar season to last year where they win their first game and then struggling against a harder opponent in the second one.
I agree.
All right. So Michigan advances. Now we have Auburn versus Creighton.
This is easy. Auburn, like we said earlier, hasn't won many games, but they're still Auburn. They're still a great team. Auburn's going to beat Creighton.
I agree, but I'll go a little bit longer with it. If there's a team that could beat Auburn this early, it would be Creighton, right? Like, it'd be a team that was tall and could hit some big shots and has some tournament experience and has a good head coach and has seniors. But I just don't think they're going to have enough to stop what Auburn has to bring to the table.
Okay, so now we have Auburn versus Michigan. Does Auburn advance?
Yes.
Yeah, Auburn advances here. They're too loaded. They're too stacked. They got a phenomenal rotation. They're too poised under pressure. And
like Jake said before, sorry to interrupt again, but we're not going to overthink it. I'm not overthinking. I'm not going to try to find a way to make it to where Auburn loses this game. I've been on the Auburn train all year with how talented they are, and I'm not going to overthink a game like this. There'll be some time for overthinking later in the bracket, but this isn't one of them.
yeah, last year in the regular season, me and Austin looked at each other and we're like, UConn looks like the best team in the country. But we believed it was too good to be true. And so that led us to kind of cloud our judgment a little bit. This entire season, Auburn has been the best team in the country. Up there with Duke, you could debate it. It's a good debate, but I'm not gonna let my eyes. I believe what my eyes tell me, and what it tells me is that Auburn is gonna beat Michigan.
Okay. Now we go to Iowa State versus Michigan State.
This is definitely a tough one, but Iowa State has a great defense, but so does Michigan State. Iowa State is a better shooting team than Michigan State. However, Michigan State is second in the entire country in three-point percentage allowed. Add on to the fact that over their last 3 games, as a team, they are shooting 40% from 3. I think with the injury to Keyshawn Gilbert and with the recent field goal and shooting success that Michigan State has found, I think Michigan State wins this game.
Yeah, I do think the Keyshawn Gilbert injury is enough for a game that's supposed to be this tight to sway in Michigan State's favor. I think if Keyshawn Gilbert had a chance of playing in this game, I would think about it a little bit longer. But Tom Izzo's a great head coach, and I think that Michigan State truly is that dangerous this year.
All right. So we have Michigan State advancing. You have the 1 and 2 seed facing each other. Who wins, Auburn or Michigan State?
You want to start?
This one's a little bit tougher, but I'm still going Auburn.
I am also going Auburn.
Okay.
They're just too good. They've proven to be too good. If they lose in the first round, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, let me just say this: if they lose in the first round, I lose all faith in my ability to choose teams in March Madness ever. I mean, if they lose to Creighton, I'd be really mad. But I could see it. Like I see the world where it happens,
Me
right?
too.
But I don't think it's going to. Like I'm adamantly don't think it's going to. But I can see the world where it happens. I can see the world where they lose to Michigan. I just don't think they will. And I can see the world where they lose to Michigan State. But I think Auburn's that good, and I think they figured it out.
No, I agree.
Okay. All right. So
Especially
as for the new format.
especially after losing in the first round last year.
Yeah.
They're not going to let it happen again. All of these seniors.
All right. So that concludes our part 1 of the video. Once again, make sure you're following the bracket. Make sure if you want to see how the Final Four turned out, just wait a couple hours and it will be posted. But we're also going to have different regions, so feel free to listen, and we appreciate you listening. And thank you for listening to part 1. And now we'll see y'all in another type of video there will be multiple videos. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.